Hi, Bologna United Methodist Church. Pastor Lauren here, introducing a new devotional series we're going to be doing for our midweek devotion time for the next few weeks. Over the next few weeks, we're going to have different people sharing about the ways that their life has been reimagined during the pandemic. We're in the middle of a sermon series called Life Reimagined right now, and so I want to have some conversations with people, or for you to hear from some people who are going to share about the way their faith has been challenged or changed or even strengthened during this time. Most of the time you'll be hearing from congregants, but our first devotional is going to be with my brother, Matt DeLano, who is a pastor at Round Rock Church of Christ in Round Rock, Texas. He's going to be talking with us a little bit about the ways his faith has been strengthened and challenged during this time. And this is an opportunity for you all to get to know a little bit more about me and about my family. So, Matt, glad you're here with us today.
Thanks, Lauren. It's good to be with you.
And as we start our time, can you just say a little bit about yourself, about who you are other than my brother and what you do at Round Rock Church of Christ, and maybe a little about your family?
Yes, I can. So I am the Discipleship Minister at Round Rock Church of Christ. I've been here for about 15 months, and my main roles are I'm the minister over our small groups here at Round Rock, which consists of about 20 different groups and 300 people or so, which is taking up most of my time. But I'm also in being over discipleship. A part of building programs and experiences for people that are in our church, but also people who are coming to our church that are either first-time churchgoers or even people who are just coming to a new church because they've moved to the area. And we're walking with them and trying to figure out how to get them plugged into our church and how to help them to grow in their relationship with God. And I am husband to Amber, my wife Amber, and I also, in this season of COVID, had our first child, which has been wonderful and terrifying and exciting. And our daughter Avery is just over 5 months old now. And so we have really enjoyed this time together, even as this time has been difficult. So that's a little bit about me.
Thanks. So as you mentioned, having Avery, I got to be there a few days after she was born, which was right as things were shutting down all across the U.S. Churches were closing. We weren't gathering anymore in person. There was a lot of people were unsure about what was next. And so Avery has only been alive during COVID-19 and the pandemic. And so I wonder, this might be part of your answer, but what for you has changed during COVID-19 and during the pandemic, and how have you seen God in new ways, or how have you been challenged in your faith?
So as Lauren mentioned, it's been interesting. Literally the day we came home from the hospital, that day our church decided to suspend in-person services. And so we've really had, since we've been in the hospital to when Amber delivered the baby, we haven't since then had any form of normal. And I think for me in particular, the biggest challenge has been I just have realized so much that my faith is not my own, and just how necessary it has been in my walk and in my time as a Christian to have so many other people around me who are chasing after similar things, the same things, and in my job, my whole job is centered around being with people.
Right.
I found myself probably 4 to 5 times a week meeting with people at least every week in person, and so to have that go from that to zero has been definitely a difficult challenge, not just as a minister, but for me personally in my faith, because like I was saying, I get so much out of the stories I hear, the community that we build together in conversation and stuff like that. And we know, right, that we're created to be in relationship with each other,
Right.
and not just virtual relationship. And so I think, trying to figure out how to navigate that and how to grieve, that experience has been maybe the biggest challenge for me. But in light of, in your second half of that question, now the beauty of it is, as even though I've experienced this difficulty and this struggle and grieving, I've had the gift of a baby, and becoming a parent. And so it's been this weird juxtaposition of, getting to a point where I miss people and I miss my church, but I've also been able to kind of cue into a little bit of what it's like for God to be our parent, for God to love us, for God to see us, and to, with all of my being, with all of God's being, I'm sure, just love us and want to protect us and care for us. And so I've seen that in Avery and in my relationship with her and Amber's relationship with her. And we've just seen just the miracle of growth, the miracle of creation and birth, and just the God that we serve. And so, yes, I probably would have seen that without COVID, but it's been just right in front of my face in a way that maybe it wouldn't have been. And so that's been a great joy, a great gift in the midst of this.
Yeah, and I noticed as you're sharing about this, there's sort of this juxtaposition between grief of the things we're missing out on, but at the same time, so often we have these sort of opposing things happening in our faith. We're grieving the things that we're not getting to experience right now, but also we get to experience new life. And you're seeing new life in Avery and in your family, but also I imagine new life in your congregants in some ways, in the ways that they're having to discover too how important people are in their faith lives and how important community is. And so our faith is just always evolving, and while we're grieving, while we're experiencing hardship and challenge, we're also always sort of being open to new ways of meeting God and trusting that God meets us in these strange times. Has your faith become more clear or more sure during this season? You talked a little bit about realizing you need community, but are there other ways you've found your faith or found joy during this season?
Yeah, I think maybe outside of Avery and outside of parenthood, I think part of it is, I've just felt so thankful for the fact that I have come to realize how necessary community is and how much it emboldens me, how much it enables me to actually be a better person and a better version of myself. And with that too, I've had a lot of time to think about some of the things that have maybe gotten my way in the past. Not to say that I've improved beyond need for improvement, but there's certain things that I've figured out that really were problems, just like consumption of so many different things and culture and so forth, and trying to figure out, like, how can I fill my time rather than actually being present in the moment. And one of those things that I've heard recently talked about is, and I've tried to live into and think about more, is how can we live with a posture of simplicity, and realizing that simplicity isn't about not having any excess. It's not, and it's also not about asceticism. It's not about giving up everything for your own for your body and for everything about you to become less. But rather, it's about reframing our possessions. It's about reframing what we consume, and in a way that allows us to rejoice in times where God has given us enough, but also to look for provisions and look for things that might actually be more abundant than we think they are, and more filling than we think they are. And I think especially like family, right? Sometimes we can get so busy that we miss out on how filled we can be if we just spend time with each other. And obviously that's been difficult. It's hard to spend time with the same people constantly, but at the same time, if we really acknowledge that God is giving us that space, then we can really, really take hold of that.
Yeah, I think that's helpful because in the midst of COVID, we've sort of all been pushed into the scarcity mindset from the very beginning, from toilet paper running out to cleaning supplies and so every time we see those things on the shelf, we take as much as we can. And so that has sort of been in my mind, that mindset, and other things too. Like you've always been feeling like there's not enough time, there's not enough of this or that. And we've had time to sort of reset a little bit and realize we do have abundant time, we have abundant relationships, and we can decide even more now that things have slowed down, what is worthy of my time?
Right.
Is this necessary, or am I just doing this because it's what I've always done or what I'm supposed to be doing? And so I think, helping us to reframe if our lives are full of abundant grace and love, and what should we be spending that time and our relationships on?
Yeah, definitely. No doubt.
Any other last thoughts as we close our conversation?
Yeah, I will say, you asked this earlier and I didn't fully answer it, but in terms of ways of connecting with God that have been meaningful in this time, I will say too, one thing that has kind of come to me in a different light, I guess, is prayer. I have always had a journey with prayer. I've struggled at times to pray. I've had moments where I couldn't stop praying, and felt super connected to God. And I just have come to realize how much our church and how much, even just myself, we just struggle with prayer. And so I've spent a lot of time searching for ideas related to prayer and trying to figure out what it takes, I guess, to enable me to pray more and to be maybe more specific in my prayers, and to realize how transformative it is. And so one of the awesome things I stumbled upon is I've been reading Celebration of Discipline by Richard Foster, and one of the things he says, which I think is so helpful, is he says real prayer is something we learn. The disciples asked Jesus, "Lord, teach us to pray." And I've just found that to be such a relief, to know that it's a learning process. And it's so contextual too. Like we learn how to pray in the midst of difficult times. We learn how to pray when we're joyful, but we don't just get it immediately. And oftentimes our lack of desire to pray, or our lack of praying, is something that we become ashamed of. And what I've realized is thankfully that it's a learning process, and we have so many examples before us to give us words to say, and to give us perspective and ways to mirror prayers. And so I've found it super helpful to just go through Scripture, and to look up prayers from not just the Psalms, but Hannah's prayer in 1 Samuel, Mary's prayer in Luke, Jonah's prayer over the Ninevites and having to go, Paul's prayers throughout his letters. Like all of these things give us words to pray, and so I've tried to find that, and then some short prayers to try and figure out, hey, what is helpful for me is sometimes just to have a short sentence, to pray for our week or day. And so, like, help me to love you, God, or God, give me the desire to pray. And so, like, all of those things I think have been meaningful to me, and just giving me a chance to kind of focus on what it means to pray and to be in relationship with God in that way. So.
Yeah, and I think it's helpful for people to hear that their pastors have trouble praying sometimes too, right? We're not perfect at spiritual practices yet either, but we're doing our best to connect with God and have seasons where we're struggling too. I've had conversations twice in the last couple of weeks with people asking me how to pray. Yeah. And I've said, I think all we were taught to do was to kneel or sit and close our eyes, and that's the way you're supposed to pray. But I don't think that's always the most helpful way for us to pray. Sometimes we need to go on a walk. Sometimes we need I heard this woman named Emily Freeman one time talk about borrowed prayers, which are the prayers you mentioned, prayers that have already been written that we can use. I have a prayer taped on my bathroom mirror that I try to use to start my day. So we just have to, like you said, try different things and see how they work. And maybe something works for a season and then it doesn't, and we have to try something new. But I think you're right too, in the middle of COVID, when we feel far away from God sometimes, or when we feel so distressed, it feels more imperative for us to find ways to connect. And I think prayer is a good way to do that, but we, like you said, have to be open to trying things and seeing how we can connect with God, because everyone connects differently.
Yep, no doubt.
Well, thanks for joining me for a conversation and for allowing the congregation and my congregation to get to know you a little bit better and me a little bit better through you and through this conversation. As I mentioned, over the next few weeks, we'll continue to have conversations with congregants or other people about the way that their faith has been challenged, changed, and even the hopes that they have in the midst of this time. So I hope you'll continue to join us for those conversations, and I hope you have a great day.
Thanks.
Thanks, Matt. It was great to have you with me.